DMZ was a failure. There was a lot of potential, but ultimately the inherent laziness from the publisher was the reason it failed. It made too much of an effort to basically be an extraction version of Warzone and not enough effort to be its own standalone title, so it was doomed to fail. But there's a game out there that's currently in beta that's going into full release, including on console next year, and this game is called Delta Force. Is the game perfect? No. But is this game incredibly good for a beta? Yes. And no, it isn't just a standalone extraction shooter, it actually has an incredible multiplayer aspect tied to it, which is very similar to how Battlefield looks, except from this one is fun to play, unlike 2042. So why is this game taking the extraction shooter space by storm, and why should you be paying attention to it? Well, aside from the basics that any shooter needs, which includes good gunplay, a large amount of viable weapons so things don't get stale, and engaging maps, of which Delta has all of these in abundance, it has really made an effort to simplify and streamline the unnecessarily complicatedness of the genre, which for a lot of people, if you're just trying to jump in and play a few hours and jump off again, this game does that the best out of any of the other options out there. But I still think there is room to clean this up even further, as after my first session on it after the alpha, it took a while to get back into it and understand how things work again. But really what this does incredibly well is it's just fun to play. Way more fun and polished than DMZ ever was. That game was so stripped back, it basically was a Call of Duty game with some big map missions. Not really an extraction shooter it was trying to be, as there was no punishment for dying, as you could actually just buy a bundle in the store just to get your weapons back immediately, as opposed to waiting the set time it had in place. And the extraction therefore didn't feel that good either, or that challenging. Bar completing set missions, there really wasn't much else to do in the mode. It just felt soulless. And that's really where the game failed. It essentially was just a campaign mode, with the option just to go and kill a few other players now and then. But if you played Warzone, you were already really knowledgeable with the map, which took out any of the exploration options. Whereas on Delta Force, there is so much to do. You go into a run, initially with the idea of doing a set mission, but then you get sidetracked by other players, or just discovering a cool new area of the map, or you just find some great loot. And this just keeps happening in every single run, as there are multiple maps to play, currently 4 in place with a 5th being added on January the 1st, and you actually feel the jeopardy of dying on these runs, as you're going to lose all of your sometimes very expensive loot, weapons and armor too. And the fact that this is off-putting is good. And with extracting, with the right exploration, there is often a lot of really valuable loot, which makes the gameplay more tense and brings a real sense of satisfaction when you actually succeed with an extraction. Each run becomes a thrilling, high-stakes adventure, keeping you coming back for more. Do I think DMZ is dead in the water with no room to come back? Well, if they don't massively innovate on what they have already done, then yes. But if they're open to doing more work, then there is plenty of room for it, as I still feel that Delta Force overcomplicates certain things, like do we actually need hundreds and hundreds of different individual items that can all be used towards different things? This could be stripped back by half the amount, and I still think it would be too much. It just isn't necessary, and this just has a knock-on effect throughout the entire game, as when you're making armor, weapons, attachments, base upgrades, or even sorting out your stash, this all becomes overly complicated, as these all require different items. Would streamlining this down be great for the more hardcore players? Probably not, but it does make a higher barrier for entry, as it can just all be quite overwhelming for the more average player. And after you complete a run, you just find yourself playing an inventory management mini game instead of just jumping back into your next run. Even little things like having to accept each individual mission, then going back in to complete them too. This could all be easily automated and lead to far less clicks between runs. I could keep going on about the areas that it does need to improve, but I don't really want to dog on it, especially with it being in beta. A lot of these things will be worked out in the process, and some improvements will be made, as there was a lot of improvements made from the alpha. And you have to remember, this isn't a full release yet, this is just a beta, and it's free to play. But I guess the question that really matters is this. Is this the best extraction shooter in the space at the moment? Yes. And I think it clears everything else available, and by a reasonable margin too. So if you're bored of playing DMZ or Warzone, for whatever reason, this is a great game to try out, especially given that it's free to play. But if you want to know why Warzone is dead at the moment, then click on the video on screen now, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.